Hey, this is Adam Hoffman. I am a reformed property manager turned real estate salesperson. And I'm going to tell you today about the top 4 things that you should know before buying an investment property. One, what is the spread between the capitalization rate and your financing costs? With this, you want to create in advance detailed pro forma statements. The listing agents or the owner's statements are great to examine, but you should dissect them with a critical eye as well as build your own. Item number 2, what is the stability of the revenue source? First thing you want to examine is the legality. With this, even single-family houses and condominiums can pose challenges unexpectedly at times. With condominiums, there can be rules and regulations preventing you from renting to your ideal tenant profile or just who happens to apply when you want them to. This can be broad-ranging, ranging from the amount of people allowed in the unit to additional charges above a certain amount of people to the types of family structure to even if you're allowed to rent out the unit at all. And believe it or not, although in non-condominium rentals you may not be able to restrict for these reasons based on Ontario Human Rights Code, in condominiums there are certain rules that are allowed and are enforceable even when they wouldn't be otherwise. With non-condominium properties, you want to take an especially good look at your municipal regulations. Oshawa, Waterloo, I'm looking at you. Second item that you want to examine when looking at the stability of your revenue source is what are the barriers to new supply in your marketplace. This can be very broad ranging in terms of new development, and with this you want to look at the timeline to bring new development on board, which can be very long throughout the greater Toronto area, the cost of bringing new development on board, and this also can be very costly, but you really want to look at what's the spread between what the pre-existing cost of properties on the market are today and the valuation that will be had for new construction sales and the cost for a developer to bring it to market, and what are the spreads between those. In addition, you want to look at the barriers for the pre-existing housing stock to convert to rentals. This can be barriers such as rental licensing, or it can be very broader in terms of the ease or difficulty for adding additional units to it. So for example, a municipality that has very open zoning and allows you to add a 6-plex throughout a good portion of available houses, or doesn't, or for example, are you in an area with lots of old houses, or wide 1950s bungalows with walkout basements, make a very big difference as the ease of your competitors potentially offering new rentals in the marketplace based on their ceiling height, their egress, their setbacks between neighbors, and their amount of parking. You want to examine this to know how likely your rental rates are to increase, decrease, or stagnate in the future, as these will be signals for people to want to bring a new supply on the market and compete with you. Next thing you want to look at is what will your expenses be over time. And you might think, well, a lot of items I just discussed could impact your revenue, but your expenses can also be impacted because there's a flood of new supply. You may be looking at offering incentives to renters on a new lease-up, and you will have to budget long-term for repairing and replacing capital expenditures. So these are things like roofs, balconies, boilers, heating systems, driveways, decks, and everything else. At some point, they will need repair or replacement. You want to set yourself up at the start of the purchase that you know that you have a reserve fund or access to financing for them, so that you aren't in a position that you will need to sell when having to address them eventually. Lastly, you want to know your tenant profile when examining the stability of the revenue source. Who is your ideal tenant? How likely they are to rent your property? How consistently you'll be able to find them? And most importantly, what do your actual collected rent numbers look like and will look like in the future versus what the pro forma numbers that are being provided to you state? And hopefully you'll be able to create your own pro formas to accurately reflect the risk profile of the tenant that's likely to rent your property. Item number 3, factor to look at when purchasing an investment property is how can you add a value to the purchase. Now, you don't need to. Many people have made a lot of money purchasing a property and letting inflation provide their profit for them. However, you can do even better than that if you have the time, the expertise, the money, and the right guidance to do so. And you're going to want to look at is what is the spread between your purchase price and your purchase price plus repair costs and after renovation value. You also want to look at is there future redevelopment potential, and you also want to look at how can I, through my superior management or through my team and the people I hire superior management of the property, add value, increase net income, and in turn increase the valuation of the property and your potential future sales price, or have built-in equity, or allow for refinancing. Lastly, you want to look at, or item number 4, is who is your team that is going to help you operate your property. You want to be able to go into a purchase knowing that you have everyone around that you'll need to, both for maximizing your net income as well as for your own sanity. So with this, you want to look to accountant, insurance agent, contractor, trades of all sorts, someone like myself, a former property manager turned real estate salesperson, as well as everyone's favorite person, a lawyer. I'm going to be making future videos going into detail on all these topics as well as other topics, and happy to hear from you for any requests or any questions. Give me a call, 647-822-1620. Bye.